Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Ari, and today we're going to have some more stories about our toxic life. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video, if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now without further ado, let's go. Today's first story. In this story, a 7-year-long, long-distance relationship fell apart after one partner cheated. Plans for a joint bachelor and bachelorette trip were in jeopardy as the cheating partner's behavior changed suddenly. The cheater admitted to infidelity and suggested taking a break. The betrayed partner was hurt by the lack of remorse and felt that more was being concealed. The situation is emotionally devastating, and they're going on the trip without the cheating partner. Now let's get into the story. After a 7-year relationship that I thought was rock solid, she cheated on me. We were long distance and about to start our bachelor and bachelorette trip, which many of our friends had committed to. I had been looking forward to this trip for over a year. Unlike a traditional bachelor or bachelorette outing, we simply planned a fun trip where we do everything together with friends. The wedding itself had been difficult to plan out, so up until a few weeks ago, we were discussing doing a courthouse wedding right at the start of the trip. In that case, city would essentially be a wedding celebration. I was so excited to finally marry her. Less than a month ago, she started behaving strangely. I ignored it for a bit, but started bugging her a couple of weeks ago. What's this disconnect? What is this detachment? Is there something we should talk about? She's in grad school, and I understood how stressful that is. I wanted to know what was going on and if I could help. Suddenly she told me she wasn't sure about getting married right away. She mentioned a break. She used to regularly mock the idea of people taking breaks in relationships. This about-face confused the hell out of me. It made me a little suspicious. She then started listing problems with me. Most of them I perceived as relatively minor. Oh, did you cheat? No answer. Just told me she needed to figure herself out. She showed no remorse. She brought up weird rationalization after weird rationalization to explain that I was just as responsible as her. I got some details from her, and she insisted it was just one person, but she returned to him 3 times. It all started last month in May, exactly around the time I noticed her behavior changing. Her plan was to go on our week-and-a-half-long bachelor and bachelorette trip and tell me about the cheating during it. Can you believe that she said that was her plan? I think it was more likely she was going to hide it, find another excuse to eventually break up with me after the fun trip with our friends, and keep it secret that she cheated. I'm glad I got it out of her when I did, but at this point, I think she isn't telling me the whole truth and that she likely cheated in the past. You see, she ended up explaining that she loves being doted on. I already knew that she flirts with guys that she doesn't even like just to get them to give her attention. She implied that it was inevitable that she would cheat, since I hadn't paid attention to her unhappiness. I'll point out that a couple of months ago, I decided I was leaving my current job and moving back to her, specifically because the distance was hurting us. I had already committed to fixing that situation, and she seemed psyched about it at the time. But she told me that she's a very sexual person and that she probably couldn't be in a monogamous relationship at the same time. She said she hoped we could come to some compromise and continue with the relationship delusional. It's messy. I am upset and trying to get more details and understand why, but her lack of remorse is devastating in a way that I never could have expected. I needed her to acknowledge that she did something wrong, but that admission never came. Now she doesn't want to talk for a bit because she claims she is angry with me and needs to calm down. She thinks she is a victim. I'm going on the trip with my friends. Her and her friends are not. I leave in a few days. Everything about this is heartbreaking and I'm so lucky. I have incredible friends. I don't know what else to say other than I didn't know how damaging this kind of experience was until now. The physiological effects are crazy. I just want it to be over now. Today's second story. In this story, a couple met at a rock climbing event, later attended a retreat where they promised to be faithful to each other. However, the wife engaged in an affair with a man named Doug during the retreat. The husband discovered the affair through a letter and hired a private investigator to confirm it. He changed the locks on their home, leading to their divorce. The wife later found out she was pregnant with Doug's child, who wanted nothing to do with her or the child. Now let's get into the story. My wife and I met at a rock climbing event in the old western United States. We were married 6 years before we decided to go on a very hippie-like retreat that had about 50 people attending. It mostly coupled that were against traditional stereotypes and what normal behavior is. So yes, there was nudity and other things there that society would most likely frown upon. Before we even got settled in the camp, we promised each other we would not have sex with anyone else, only each other. We enjoyed the getaway in nature with like-minded individuals, but we weren't okay with breaking our promise to each other, or so I thought. On the second night there, we attended the bonfire that was held each night. During the stay, groups of people formed and we started great conversations with anyone in hearing range. My conversation wasn't always the same one my wife was having, but I didn't mind or notice anything weird about that night. Looking back now, it was probably the first night she spoke to the man we'll call Doug. We partied hard for the next few days and started sticking with a specific group of people that included Doug. Some days and nights are a blur, but I don't necessarily remember being separated from my wife at any time during the vacation. When we got home, my wife was really happy and exceptionally peaceful. Over the course of a year, my wife became a little more fake. She didn't tell me any of her thoughts and would get defensive if I said she looked sad or upset about something. Well, I had the feeling that our relationship was coming to an end despite my attempts to rekindle the flame. It was around this time that I found a letter in the mail. It was opened and crumpled up in the bottom of the trash. The only reason I found it was because our dog knocked over the can. It was from Doug to my wife. He wrote about taking off her clothes and escaping their daily lives with each other. In the end, he asked if she would meet him at a hotel on a specific weekend. I was shaking. I could not believe my wife was still communicating with this man from over a year ago. I couldn't believe she never told me anything about it, but instead kept pretending she was content being my wife. I hired a pie to follow her and watch the hotel mentioned in the letter. When my wife came to tell me about a friend of hers reaching out unexpectedly and inviting her out to a bachelorette party, I knew it was BS. I intentionally grilled her and asked her a lot of completely justified questions. I even asked for the girl's phone number and she refused, complaining that I didn't trust her. I pretended she persuaded me and had a good point. I mentioned how I trusted her to be a good and loyal wife because that's all she'd ever been to me. I swear I saw her cringe when I said that. As soon as she left, I informed the pie to be on the lookout in 30 minutes. He started sending me pictures. It was her greeting and giving a warm embrace to none other than Doug. It was surreal to see it happening. Sometime later I got the rest of the pictures, which was enough to prove they spent time alone in hotel and have no problem kissing on the lips. I pride myself on being a handyman, so after I threw up, I changed the locks on her doors. When she tried to return home the next day after her nice little weekend affair, she was disturbed to find that her house key no longer worked and I refused to answer her calls. After standing outside the house for 2 hours, her mom came and picked her up. I didn't know what lies she was telling her, but it gave me comfort to know she was panicked. She had no choice but to stay with her mom until I finally came over to their house. It was the first time in 2 weeks that she saw my face or heard from me and she broke down sobbing. She tried to hug me and I held my arm out straight to stop her. She cried and begged me to listen, but all I did was show her the pictures. The PI sent me. She told me she was sorry. She let her feelings get way out of control for this guy, and she regretted everything she'd done. I told her I'd think about getting back together, but I only said it because I needed her to let me leave. It's a good thing I didn't take her back right then, because a few months later, she discovered she was pregnant. I didn't mention it until now, but at this time, she and I had a 2-year-old daughter that she was missing terribly. Her parents lived in a retirement home, so they weren't allowed to have anyone living with them, especially not children. It was bad enough they were hiding their daughter there, but now she was expecting a child from an affair. Her dad was appalled. Shortly after she was officially divorced from me, I found out that Doug, the father of her unborn child, was a married man. He would have nothing to do with her or their child. I also found out that my wife and Doug had physical relations at the couples retreat we went on a year and a half before and had been seeing each other ever since. She always tells me she deeply regrets what she's done, but it doesn't matter anymore. Everyone has to live with the consequences of their selfish decisions and mistakes. I hope she's able to learn from hers. Today's third story. In this story, a couple met in college, had a rocky marriage with infidelity issues. The wife had an emotional affair, blamed her husband, and tried to reconcile but kept contacting the other person. Eventually, she left, filed for divorce, and her relationship with the other guy fell apart. She wanted to come back, initiated counseling, and expressed regret. The husband is conflicted about giving the relationship another chance despite still loving her. Now let's get into the story. My wife and I met back in college. We dated for 5 years before getting married. Our marriage has been good with little ups and downs. We have 2 girls, ages 13 and 15. January last year, I noticed my wife spending more time on her phone than usual. She basically did what every typical cheater does: lied, blamed, shifted, and gaslight me when I tried to express my concerns. I know I was not perfect, and I did some things that I regret very much. But she treated me like a piece of shit all this time. During her affair, I tried to improve all the aspects of our relationship that she felt were not good. When Discovery Day came at the beginning of June, she confessed to having an emotional affair and sleeping with him twice. Then she blamed me for her affair. She said that she wanted to reconcile, and we tried reconciliation, but she was just not into it. She still contacted him, and they were still talking. When I told her how uncomfortable it made me, she said they were just friends and kept deleting texts, even when I told her not to. When I threatened divorce, she would cry, apologize, and beg me not to. When I tried to bring up the affair, she would get mad, and somehow I was the one who ended up apologizing. Then after 2 or 3 months, she started disappearing again, saying that she was visiting family because they needed her at the time. I knew she was going to see the affair partner, and when I brought it up, she was very convincing. One weekend she disappeared and didn't pick up my calls or answer my texts. And when she came back, she told me that her cousin had gotten sick and they had to rush her to the hospital and forgot her phone at her sister's place. And all this time I was trying to make it work for us. She saw all the efforts I made but just didn't care. Then by mid-December, she told me that she was moving out, that she had been unhappy in our relationship, and that while she still cared for me, she was in love with her affair partner. She said that she had finally found her soulmate. I remember crying for hours trying to beg her, but her mind was made up. We had to tell the kids. She said that I could have the kids for the weekdays and she could come to visit them on weekends. Since her affair partner's apartment was small, she filed for divorce a week after. This was the worst moment of my life. I grieved for weeks. I tried to talk to her to see if there was any chance, but all she said was that she was sorry for everything she had put me through. But her mind was made up. No one other than us knew. Both she and my parents knew that we were only separated, but never knew the reason. By the end of January, when her mom called me and insisted I tell the truth, I invited her over together with her dad. I told them everything and literally, I broke into tears and cried on my mother-in-law's shoulder. They comforted me and apologized for their daughter's behavior. I later told my parents and then a few close friends. Soon enough, everyone knew about us and I started receiving comforting messages from others talking ill of my ex. Soon afterward, my wife called me crying, saying that I turned everyone against her and that she hated me. She said that people were threatening her and her affair partner, and that her dad hated her, they had a close relationship, and that her sisters didn't want to speak to her. And no one would speak with her without insulting her. That was mid-April. By the beginning of June, her relationship with her affair partner had fizzled out due to stress. I remember she came to see the kids and told me that her affair partner kicked her out because she couldn't handle the stress of their relationship. She was living in a hotel room. She didn't look good at all, like someone who was depressed. She asked if she could move back in, and I said no. She said that she understood, but asked to spend more time with the kids. She said that she wanted to make up for the lost time with the kids and wanted to come in the afternoon and cook for them and spend time with them. I agreed. By this time, she would come to cook my favorite meal, clean the house, and write small notes saying I love you together with flowers. When I came back home from work, she would always try to spend some more time with me. I have to admit I did enjoy spending time with her. Then she started talking about how much she missed me and asked if a divorce was what I really wanted. I always avoided these conversations. Last week she told me that she had been going to individual counseling and was wondering whether we should try marriage counseling. She has started dressing the way I like and wearing makeup. She has tried to initiate sex, but I've turned her down. She has bought me more goods, and countless times she has brought up marriage counseling. Over the weekend, she cried, begging me not to go through with the divorce, saying she had already put up with a lot and that all she wanted was to get me and her family back. She said she would do whatever I wanted. I know it's like the roles are reversed. All this time I have been numb. Although a part of me feels happy now that she has gotten the taste of her own medicine, I still love her, but I don't really know if I should give our relationship another chance.